Well, we're here to talk about the Championship's midweek action, but before we get underway, a reminder that we're once again giving away 2 pairs of tickets to Championship games. All you have to do is sign up to our Patreon and answer this weekend's question. It'll be going up at 7 on Friday night, and you have until Sunday to answer it to be in the prize draw. So sign up to our Patreon. It's patreon.com/second tier. Link is in the description of this episode. It only costs £3.50 a month. That's less than a coffee nowadays, Justin. Or how much were the chips at Anfield?
£3, but it's
basically
less
the
than
same price as some chips at Anfield. There you go. That's the comparison that you needed in your life. And you'll also, of course, get access to our fantastic Discord with Justin, I, and other Championship fans, as well as ad-free shows, plus our bonus show at the weekend. It's a bigger bargain than chips at Anfield or Jamie Vardy to Leicester all those years ago, Justin.
Jamie Vardy to Leicester. Yes, it is less than £1 million, which for me is great value already.
There you go. There you go, ladies and gents. Let's get on to the midweek action, shall we? And we'll begin with probably the most eye-catching result of the midweek games. Stoke 6, Portsmouth 1. Tom Cannon scoring 4 of the goals in this one. Big thank you to Stoke for doing this less than 24 hours after I released a YouTube video about Stoke not going anywhere for the past 6 years. I suppose it's still true despite this result, but superb timing on my behalf. But what a turn for the books this result was, Justin?
Yeah, I don't think anyone would have had Stoke being the first club to sack a manager this season. Obviously, Ryan Lowe left by mutual consent. Worth pointing that one out as a caveat. But obviously, Steven Schumacher was the first manager to be sacked in the Championship this season. And then 2, the first team to score 6 in a game. It's just been quite an incredible few weeks, especially after really poor 2 hours of football in the last 2 games under Narcis Splash. Obviously, the half-an-hour capitulation against Hull and then the defeat at the weekend. It's just been an incredible turnaround.
Yeah, it really was. This game, you know on FIFA how you can adjust the settings so that every shot was just about unsavable? It was kind of like that. It felt like every shot Stoke had was lethal. It was almost a sign of things to come when Ben Wilmot hit the ball from about 25 yards out in the first couple of minutes, and then Ender Stevens followed up with one of the best struck shots he'll ever hit in his entire life. Yeah. And they were 2 of the ones that didn't go in, because after that it was just goals. Got to be said, Will Norris and the Portsmouth goal had an absolute stinker. It wasn't so much Massimo Taibbi against Southampton, but he was either at fault or could have done better for just about every goal. But ultimately, Stoke were absolutely ruthless. It feels like they've taken up a significant chunk of their goals quota for the season in just one game, because they only scored 4 in their first 7 of the season. But a great result, because I will be honest, I thought Portsmouth could do a job on them. And that quite obviously didn't happen. Tom Cannon scoring 4 of the goals, as we say. And he had looked pretty poor so far for Stoke. But this was a reminder of what the Cannon can do, Justin.
Yeah, the Cannon does pack a punch. He is a devastating finisher when he's on form. And I think a lot of strikers, they can take a while to get going, especially if the team you're playing for is also out of form. So, yeah, I'm not jumping to the defence of him there, but I think he showed you what he's capable of in this game. He is a fantastic finisher and a player who adds a lot of potency to Stoke, as I say, when he gets going. Also the first player to score a hat-trick for Stoke since John Walters in 2015. Imagine waiting that long.
Hell.
Imagine waiting that long for a player on your team to score a hat-trick. Obviously he scored 4 here, but still an accolade, still a huge accolade. But for me, I think Tom Cannon, he's born to score goals. He really is. His movement off the ball was outstanding in the game. It really was. The second goal showcased that, and his 4th goal was it was instinctive touch goal. He knows what to do in front of the goal, and you can't take that away from him. As I say, I think strikers need confidence, and I think he's got it.
Yeah, it's just some way to get it, wasn't it? It looked like as soon as he scored the first one, he was just scoring from everywhere from that stage. I'm still getting over that John Walters stat, I will be honest, because that's remarkable. But yeah, a ridiculous result. But I'm mostly happy for Narcis Palach because he's not had the greatest first 2 games in charge. I don't think they were particularly bad. I think in both of the first halves of those 2 games, Stoke were pretty good. And then in this one, they were just good in the whole 90 minutes. Now,
devastating.
Yeah, devastating is probably a good way of putting it. But hopefully this is him properly getting up and running as a Stoke manager. Because, look, you praised the players after the game for how hard they've worked under him so far. And Platch was saying this was a reward for them doing that. But not only is this a big confidence-boosting win, it also saw many of their players back in form, particularly Valterberger and Bae-Jun Ho, two players who we seem to mention pretty much all the time with Stoke. But that's because they're two brilliant talents who have been a bit disappointing so far. They were both amazing against Portsmouth, so an incredible win for Stoke. Let's hope it's a building block towards bigger and better things under Narcis Palach. On paper, looked like Portsmouth had finally got past their horrible start to the season in terms of fixture difficulty. They avoided defeats against Leeds, Luton, Middlesbrough and Sheffield United, gave Burnley a good game despite defeat in that one, and then get smashed by Stoke, of all teams. So with that being said, what's your current thinking with Portsmouth, Justin? Because we've had to constantly caveat them so far by saying, well, their fixtures have been really hard, but they've not had this result. Well, they've now had this result as well as only getting 1 point in their last 5 games. So what are you thinking?
Yeah, it's such a I wouldn't say a freak result, because I think that's a disservice to Stoke and how well they played, and also it gets Portsmouth out of jail a little bit if you call this result a disservice, because Portsmouth were well and truly hammered here. They were so poor. They were, again, you talk about sort of really poor performances, but this really was a performance that does not befit a team in the Championship. And I think that's the easiest way you can say it. I think John Mousinho was as critical of the players. Portsmouth manager John Mousinho was as critical of the players in his post-match press conference. He really was seething, and it was easy to see why. Apart from a sort of a late flurry in the first half, the team was really poor, and in that 10-minute spell in and around the first half, just before half time, just after half time, just absolutely killed them. And then the performance after that, the reaction just was non-existent. I do think 6 flattered Portsmouth a little bit, because Stoke could have scored 7, 8, 9. It could have been an embarrassing game for them, because Stoke were that potent. Portsmouth just had no idea how to cope with them. And I think when you perform as well as you do in certain games against stronger opposition and in form, and then you get absolutely hammered on your first Tuesday night game away to Stoke, it doesn't set a very good precedent.
I'm not sure I agree that 6 flattered Portsmouth, because I think if it wasn't for Will Norris having a bit of a mare in goal, it could have been a different game, because, as we say, he was either at fault or should have done better with just about every single goal. So I'm not sure I agree with that, but it's undeniable that Portsmouth were very poor here, which is a surprise considering they set such high standards for themselves against pretty good teams so far. Of course, not many points on the boards, but as we say, we've got a caveat by the fact that they've had arguably the most difficult start to a season any team has ever had in Championship history. But this was pretty disappointing considering they've been competitive in all those games so far, and this was against Stoke side who have not been too impressive so far this season. My worry is, and I have mentioned this before with Portsmouth, is that whether that horrible set of fixtures to start the season has kind of taken the wind out of their sails with regards to carrying on the momentum from their promotion, Justin, because, Oxford and Derby, they've both done that so far. And we've seen loads of teams do that over the years, whereas Portsmouth may have that taken away from them by the unfortunate set of circumstances, which is the fixture computer. I don't know who decides the fixtures nowadays, but whoever's done that has really buggered Portsmouth in that regard, haven't they? And it could disrupt the momentum, couldn't it?
Well, disrupt the momentum, because momentum doesn't really get going, does it? And so you can't really disrupt something that doesn't exist if you're.
From last season is what I'm saying.
Yeah. No, I understand what you mean, but I think as soon as that fixture list comes out, and also the injuries they ramp up during pre-season, and in addition to that, I don't think they signed the players that they wanted to, and added the depth in areas that they needed to over the summer. There's a lot of disruption there for Portsmouth, and maybe they're in worse shape than we could have probably imagined. But actually, I think they have been a plucky side, but they've also, I don't think they've outperformed a team that they've played against so far. Not that it's expected to, but at the same time, you've got to take chances, you've got to defend well, and I don't think Portsmouth have had that complete balance yet. If you look at Derby against Middlesbrough at home, for example, Derby got absolutely hammered, put everything on the line and came away with a win and a clean sheet. You got to run your luck a little bit, and I don't think Portsmouth have done that yet. And I think that's the key thing here with Portsmouth is there's probably a little bit of
very tricky games though, Justin.
They are tricky games. You are absolutely right, but at the same time, as I say, you've got to take your luck, you've got to take your chances, and that's both in front of the opposition goal and defending your own goal. I just don't think Portsmouth have done that yet.
They have got Oxford at home this weekend, which feels like a pretty big game from a Portsmouth perspective in terms of getting things back on track. Let's move on to a repeat of one of last season's playoff semi-finals. It's the Daniel Farke derby as Leeds came from a goal down to draw 1-1 away at Norwich. Norwich went ahead in the 15th minute from a penalty. A bizarre stat here from LUFC Data on Twitter. The last 3 penalties Leeds have conceded at Carrow Road have all been scored by Norwich in the 15th minute of matches. How about that, eh? Very bizarre. No. But yeah, Leeds coming off the back of probably the best performance of the season at the weekend against Coventry after previously being a bit stuck in second gear. And this game looked like a case of them going back into second gear, Justin.
Yes and no. I think maybe if they do drop into second gear, you can forgive them for that, because I don't think you can expect a team to be firing in every game. But I think their mindset here is you probably look at this as a game where it's a good point away at Carrow Road. I don't think they were as full flowing as perhaps they were against at the weekend, but also they were allowed a lot of opportunity to attack against Coventry. Coventry were really poor. So whilst Leeds were brilliant, you got to remember the opposition weren't great against them. Whereas Norwich were very organised here. They made it difficult for Leeds to get into their full flow, and in addition to that, Leeds had a fair bit of disruption throughout the game, with obviously Gruev going off injured and Ethan Ampadu being unavailable before the game. So that's going to impact things quite significantly as well. So I think in my head, I'm probably looking at this as a good result away from home, as opposed to it being points dropped and Leeds dropping back in second gear.
I think it's definitely a good point, but I think it was definitely a step backwards in that regard. In their regard, because I was half expecting Leeds to perhaps start marching on after the weekend, if you pardon the pun. But it's hard to say they did that in this game. In fact, towards the end of the game, if any team looked like they were going to win, it was probably Norwich. And while admittedly away at Carrow Road is a very difficult place to go, it's been nearly a year since Norwich had last lost there in the league. Mm-hmm. It's more the manner of the draw, because it does feel like a step backwards after the weekend showing. And I've seen a lot of Leeds fans a bit concerned about these performances because, look, if Leeds played like they did every week at the weekend, if they played like they did at the weekend every week, then they would piss promotion. The issue is performances like that are currently surrounded by at least 3 or 4 performances which are a couple of levels below that. And yeah, it was the same thing this time last season, wasn't it? We were saying at the weekend that Leeds are definitely the team to beat this season. And I still strongly think that right now. If you finish above Leeds, you'll get automatically promoted this season. There's no doubt about that in my mind. The only thing that's putting doubt in my mind about whether they will actually go on to get automatically promoted and probably win the league this season is performances like this, because we're seeing more of them than ones like against Coventry, if you see what I mean, Justin. And right now, I would say they are the most likely team to win the league, because I think they will click, and no one else is particularly standing out to me right now. But at some point, they've just got to put their foot down, and they're struggling to do that. A lot of car metaphors in what I've just said, Justin, but you see my point.
No, I do. And again, I just think a lot of variables fall into this performance specifically. I mentioned a couple, but also it being the first Tuesday, Wednesday fixtures that we've had this season. I think there's going to be a little bit of tiredness and legginess that sets in. I think as well as that is probably a little bit more of a tactile performance where you don't allow your team to go full gung-ho, if you like, as well. I just think, we've only had 8 games of the season. I think to be saying, these performances happen too often, I think is probably a little bit unfair given the huge amount of turnover in the squad. No,
what I mean is because it was the same thing last season, wasn't it, with Leeds, where, we would still see like this team who are just like not Leeds. It's not Leeds that we know under Daniel Farke, who can be unbelievable. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I do, but I don't think you can expect it every game, and I think they are going to pick up a run of form. I mean, we saw it just before sort of the March international break. The run of form Leeds went on was ridiculous. So they do get in their flow, but I think to expect a level of performance that they had against Coventry every single week, I just think it's unrealistic, especially in the Championship.
I'm not saying it every single week, but you look at Leicester and Ipswich last season. I know that was a pretty unprecedented season in terms of promotion, but I mean, even Burnley the season before, we saw at this early stage in the season that who the obvious promotion title winner was at that stage, didn't we? And we haven't really seen that from Leeds yet.
No, we haven't. But at the same time, as I say, I think every team is different, and I think there's a more balance to the Championship this season as well, as opposed to other seasons. I think you can create arguments for all of it. I just don't think the expectation there for them to blow away the league. I just don't think I don't think you can have it right now. I think literally the next phase of games after the October international break is where you see, if they do start to filter into these performances, then you can start to question things. But I just don't think it should be the case.
Well, since we spoke on Sunday, Leeds have been dealt a gigantic blow because Ethan Ampadu has been ruled out until at least January with a knee injury. And things weren't helped either, with Ampadu's usual midfield partner, Ilya Gruev, being forced off after 20 minutes against Norwich. Daniel Farke's admitted that one doesn't look good, but we'll get a proper timescale in the next 24 hours or so, I imagine. But Ampadu, Justin, that's huge, isn't it? It feels a bit like Rodri with Man City to me. Luckily, Ampadu's only out until January, whereas Rodri, we know, is out for the season. But in terms of importance, it is similar, isn't it? You could argue he is Leeds' most important player. And there's a lot of games between now and January, it's got to be said.
Yeah, a huge amount of games. I mean, you only have to go to our pre-season previews to understand exactly how much I rate Ethan Ampadu. I think he's a quality midfielder. I think he's such a unique skill set for Leeds as well in how he passes the ball and how he plays, because he offers that defensive solidity. And how often do we say that Leeds back five, including the two midfielders, but back six, are the best in the division? And Ethan Ampadu is at the centre of that. So not only does he offer that defensive security for the team, but also his ability to pass to players into the final third and get them ticking is so important. So his skill set's really hard to replace. And as I say, I rate him very highly. I had him down to win Player of the Year. Not a goal scorer, but that's how highly I rate him. I do think he's a difference maker for Leeds. Maybe they've got good enough depth. Maybe Rothwell can come in. Maybe Tanaka can come in and offer what he's needed there. But
sounds like they're going to have to, Justin.
Well, yeah, there is. But it's whether or not they can step up and replace him, because they're completely different players to what Ethan Ampadu is.
Yeah, if you jot down Leeds' strongest 11, it's Ampadu and Gruev in midfield, isn't it? Easily. Yeah. Those two have started pretty much every game this season. So to potentially lose both of them for a considerable period of time is a humongous blow. So you're left with the aforementioned Joe Rothwell, who's good, but a comfortable downgrade on those two, I would say. And then Ao Tanaka, who's impressed so far in a Leeds shirt, to be fair, but he is still getting used to the league and is now expected to play pretty much every game for the foreseeable. And after those two, I genuinely don't know who's next. So the bottom line is Ampadu is one of the best midfielders in the league. And I've counted it up. You're looking at 16 games between now and January, Justin. So you're set to lose him for at least a third of the season. And that's massive. And that's before you even get on to potentially losing Gruev for a period of time as well. So huge blows for Leeds. We just have to see how long the Gruev injury is. But another good showing by Norwich, Justin. As I say, they probably could have won this towards the end, but will be satisfied with a point. And they had a bit of a slow start, didn't they, Norwich? But they are starting to show that they mean business this season.
Yeah, they did. I thought it was a very tactile performance on both sides, really. It had to be. And also Norwich have had a couple of really good performances, or good results, sorry. And we're starting to see Thurup, what he wants out of his team, the imprint of his team, that sort of slow possession build, going through the thirds a little bit and releasing a really, really agile attacks, burst of attacks, if you like. And we're starting to see that. We're starting to see those moments more often. And I think what they showed here against Leeds is, it was a competitive game. they showed that they can attack with purpose, but they had to defend as well. There was moments where they had to really sort of be organised and cope with Leeds at times. And you're going to have to, because Leeds are a good side, a good player. So I think it was a nice balanced performance here. I think the one against Derby at the weekend was a little bit scrappy at times, and again similar to this one. But I think when you're instilling a new philosophy into a group of players and maybe putting them in out of their comfort zones in terms of how they've been playing for 12 months under David Wagner, then sure, it's going to take time. But yeah, I think this was another impressive performance, and 4 points, 2 games in a 3-game week. It's a good return.
Well, just as the season started, we were a bit concerned about the likes of Gabriel Sara and Johnny Rowe leaving, and not as much business happening at Carrow Road over the summer as we might have expected. But since then, they've spent quite a lot of money, and the likes of Boya Saeens have stepped up, started the season on fire, hasn't he? And as well as that, Thurrock Ball seems to be really finding its feet all of a sudden. So much so that I think they'd prefer it if this upcoming international break wasn't there, because it feels like it's come at a pretty awkward time. But the early signs at Norwich have been incredibly encouraging. And it's got to be pointed out, their 2 most expensive players this summer in Antti Cernak and Amankwar Forson, who cost a combined 13 million, they've not really got going yet. Mm-hmm. So if that's still to come somewhere down the line, they could be a team to fear this season. Plus things like nearly going a year unbeaten at home in the league. It's good foundations for a side aiming for a playoff place at the very least this season. So I've been very impressed with Norwich in the past few games, and hopefully this is a really exciting sign of things to come. Cardiff City, Justin, have won a game of football. My lord, it's after they beat Millwall 1-0. A well overdue win. So overdue that if this was a takeaway delivery driver, I'd be asking for my money back. That's how overdue this was, Justin.
I think most Cardiff fans probably could ask for their money back on their tickets so far this season, because it has been absolutely garbage. I mean, this performance weirdly probably didn't create as many chances as they did against Hull, and they came out of that Hull game with a 4-1 defeat. It's just the absurdity of the Championship, of just football in general sometimes. But yeah, this was needed, absolutely needed. And obviously Perry and G coming up clutch it from a corner as well. I think it's just very, very Perry and G, very Cardiff City, in sort of recent times. But yeah, you can't explain the relief you must get after not winning your first 7 games of the season. It must be an incredible release. And obviously, as you say, Cardiff needed it, absolutely needed it, because the club has been in the doldrums probably for 3 or 4 weeks, maybe even longer. So yeah, the positivity this can instill into teams, supporters, and club is absolutely huge.
Yeah, deep in the doldrums, weren't they?
Very deep.
It's got to be said, it wasn't the prettiest of wins, but I don't think Cardiff cared at the stage how it came. They just needed a win, even if it meant sacrificing Aaron Ramsey to the gods. They just wanted and needed those 3 points. And it says a lot that they're still bottom of the table despite getting the win. That's how bad they've been so far. But yeah, it wasn't a back with a bang kind of performance. I mean, Jack Annick was arguably Cardiff's man of the match in goal. He had to make a couple of big saves, including one right at the death. But yeah, much needed win. Demetrius Gautas had his best game by far at the back. Ruben Colwill had a good game. It's a confidence booster, isn't it? It stops the rot, and it's a win that does a lot of things for Cardiff, so they'll be delighted. And one man who'll be particularly delighted is the interim manager, Omar Ritza, who was part of Eric Bullett's coaching staff. He's been strongly hinting, shall we say, that he would like the job on a full-time basis. What do you think, Justin?
Naturally, I'm very sceptical. I think, for me, Cardiff should be looking at someone with a little bit more experience. Their situation is very unique. It's very... I mean, you only got to look at recent history over the past, since the Championship began, since it was rebranded, how often teams come out of this situation they're in. Very rare. And most of the time they do have experienced managers. And I think as well, after a win, it's quite easy to come out and say you want the job because it's good PR. You know, fans are happy because you just won a game. Players are happy because you just won a game. Clubs are happy because you just won a game. He's not done enough in 2 games to earn it. They were absolutely hammered at the weekend. I would probably just approach this situation with a little bit of caution to be had, because I think this is probably as close as you'll get as to Cardiff dropping into the third tier. The start's been terrible, and it's a hard thing to come back from. So I do think if they get a good manager in with good experience, then they'll come out of it. Because I do think the squad's good enough, and we've gone down this route of appointing internally, and it's not been the wisest move, has it?
No, it's not worked out brilliantly for them in the past. But the thing that's surprised me is how few reports there have been about who the next Cardiff manager will be, considering it's been nearly 2 weeks since Bullock was sacked. I haven't seen a single credible report even hinting at who the new manager could be, which is peculiar. So maybe Ritz has got a chance. They have said it'll be during the international break, so we should hopefully get answers then. Whether Ritz will be a good choice or not, I mean, who knows? He has got managerial experience, 1 win in 7 games while in charge of Leyton Orient in 2017. But considering Cardiff's perilous position, I would say maybe look elsewhere. But as we keep saying with Cardiff, they're quite unpredictable, so who knows what they're actually thinking. Justin, let's take a quick break. After that, we'll talk about Luton throwing away a 2-goal lead and Coventry bouncing back in style. Welcome back to the Second Tier podcast. We're going through the midweek action in the Championship, and unfortunately, it's not getting any better for Luton Town. They threw away a 2-0 lead to draw 2-2 at home to Oxford. The highlight of this game has to be Luton midfielder Liam Walsh getting sent off 36 seconds after coming on as a substitute. Literally comes on, runs around a bit, and then 2 foots an Oxford player. What's he doing, Justin?
What? I want to laugh about it, but it's pissed me off. It's angered me. You need cool heads in this situation for Luton. This guy they've rescued from the doldrums of free agency because his career wasn't particularly going anywhere, and he does this. It's just stupid. Stupid. It's something you expect Kevin Muscat to do. Not Liam Walsh. Come on, what's going on?
This is what I expect when I put my instructions on Football Manager is get stuck in. This is what I want to see. This is what I want to see from my substitutes. Yeah, an absolutely remarkable thing. It's got to be one of the most bizarre things I've possibly ever seen at Championship level. Definitely one of the most bizarre things this season. Because there's just absolutely no need for it, is there? Particularly when your team were on the ropes at the time. So a brain dead thing for him to do, but at the same time very funny. Certainly the highlight of my midweek. But back to the game itself, it was quite a strange one. You would be excused for thinking Luton were in control up until 2-0 and then they just let go of the lead, but you could not be more wrong because 2-0 as a scoreline massively flattered Luton at that point because Oxford came really close several times, whereas Luton's 2 goals came from just mistakes at the back, really, from Oxford. And then when the scores were level, Luton were clinging on for dear life, weren't they? And that was before they were reduced to 10 men from Liam Walsh's bizarre cameo. And you're looking at this, Oxford will be coming away from this wondering how they didn't win, Justin.
It was a really positive performance from Oxford and probably a great advert for them to probably maybe try and get some of the neutrals on board with them because they've been excellent in a lot of their games. And I think the biggest compliment you can give them is they've given every single team they've played against a really good game. And they've gone away to Kenilworth Road. I know this season it's not been a difficult place to go and get points. Well, it has been for Luton. They've given they were much the better side and much the more potent side, you'd probably argue. Because Luton still had their chances as well, but I just don't think Luton could cope with them. And that's quite a shocking thing to say when you've got a team coming down from the Premier League with the squad that they've got and the quality of players that they've got for the Championship. They go up against a team who, by their own right, were a League One team last season. And recruitment-wise, they've not signed the players that Luton have signed. And they've just given them a lesson in desire and drive and want. And yeah, that's also a huge thing in football. I think that goes, it's intangible, isn't it? You don't measure it.
Yeah, and I'm seeing more and more Luton fans questioning Rob Edwards as the weeks go by. And we're talking about a guy here who could genuinely do no wrong in the eyes of Luton fans prior to this season. He is loved by them, isn't he, Justin? But that love is really being tested right now. I'm seeing fans talking about a lack of fight, how he needs to change the formation, whatever it is. What we're seeing right now from Luton is quite obviously not good enough, is it?
No. There's clearly a lack of confidence. I mean, losing a lot in the Premier League, I think we'll chip away at that. The team isn't really clicking now, which again is quite shocking to say, because Rob Edwards, I think, is a manager who does well to create unity. He does well to create a togetherness in how you're playing as well. And you just haven't seen this. It's probably as poor as we've seen this Luton team since Graham Jones was in charge when they first came up into the Championship in, what was it, the 2019-2020 season. It's so poor. And this is a huge test for Rob Edwards, because the team's just not clicking. I think you said it before. No idea what style of play they're going for at the moment. So you just beg the question, do we need a change in philosophy? Do we need a tinkering in formation and system to get more balance and control in the games? I don't see any aggression whatsoever. I don't see any intensity either. I don't see the basics. It's quite a shocking thing to say with this Luton team, because you've not been able to match those words, or lack of words, with Luton probably since, before Nathan Jones was in charge.
Yeah. And the thing is as well, we've had quite a few teams performing better than their results suggest so far. You genuinely cannot say that with Luton, which is scary, really. And look, we both rate Rob Edwards very highly, but sometimes circumstances just change and a manager's no longer the right fit at a club. And I'm increasingly thinking it might be time for a change. I would have been stunned if I told you that at the start of the season, that we'd be having this conversation after 8 games about Rob Edwards. But I'm also increasingly thinking there may be a chance that it happens. Because look, Luton haven't been in this position for a long time, as you say, Justin, and Edwards has probably got more than enough credit in the bank that he will last a fair while yet. However, that credit could quickly diminish, because Luton are batting well below their average right now, and a manager will do well to continue when they're in charge of any side expecting to be competing for promotion, who are actually in the bottom half, no matter what their good graces are. So it's a very worrying time for Luton, and it's going to be interesting to see it'll be interesting to know what the board are thinking right now with how things are going. But well done to Oxford. This was their first point on the road this season, as we say, the least they deserve from this game, Justin.
Yeah, they did. I think to overcome 2 setbacks as they did, they continued to create a lot of chances. You can imagine how high the confidence is within the team after that sort of game. I'd say first point on the road as well, and how they did it was incredible. But as I said, I think I was alluding to earlier, the best thing you can say about Oxford is they've not been out of games. I mean, you look at Portsmouth getting absolutely hammered against Stoke, for example. Games like that can get away from you. But Oxford they've kept within arm's reach of every single team they've played, and they've been good. I mean, they've also got quality in the team as well, which I think goes unnoticed and maybe unfairly as well. I mean, you've only got to look at the Tyler Goodrum goal. Oh. How it was just aesthetically beautiful. It was beautiful, and as I say, I just think the quality like that goes unnoticed. I've said it a couple of times already. I think they can surprise people this season.
Yeah, that Goodrum goal was an exceptional finish. He's got a good couple of goals now this season, actually. But Oxford, as we alluded to earlier, have got a big clash against fellow promoted side Portsmouth this weekend, which is a really interesting one. Coventry bounced back in style after their loss to Leeds at the weekend by thumping Blackburn 3-0 and giving Rovers their first defeat of the season. A huge victory for Coventry. Mark Robbins even admitted afterwards that it was a much needed one. And this really was night and day compared to what we saw on Saturday, wasn't it, Peachy?
Yeah, quite a reaction. Massive reaction. And they've probably beaten the best or the most rounded team. Obviously, the table toppers going into it, they've beaten the most rounded team in the division with such ease. It's just incredibly positive. So far. I always caveat it, but don't let me get carried away, do you? But it just felt like an evening where everything clicked for Coventry. They have had games where they've played well this season, but things haven't gone for them. They have not won or taken their chances. They did it here. They did it with a plum. They were so good. They were so good. And as well as the positive football on display, chances were created that were taken. Haji Wright and Brandon Thomas Asante on the score sheet as well. it was an all-round very, very positive night.
Yeah, it was a real how the turntables kind of game, wasn't it? Because, of course, Blackburn have been in such great form. I wouldn't say the best or most well-rounded team in the league so far.
I think they have been.
No, I don't agree with that at all, but they have undeniably been in great form. And Coventry really blew them out of the water. I don't know if there was some sort of a meeting with everyone to air their frustrations or something like that, but they were great. And hopefully this is everything almost clicking at once, because I have said that prior to that Leeds game, Coventry have played all right, despite just the one win so far. It was very concerning at the weekend, but they looked completely different here. Ben Sheaf looked fit and back to the Ben Sheaf who's simply too good for this league. Jack Rodoni had a good game. The defence mostly kept Blackburn at arm's length, so much better from Cov. And hopefully this is a turning point, because we often see them just suddenly start playing after their slow starts from the past couple of seasons. Maybe this is it, Justin. Who knows? But as we say, Blackburn's first loss of the season. It'll be interesting to see how they bounce back at the weekend, won't it, Justin?
Yeah, it will. It's all about reactions, isn't it? We saw Coventry get absolutely hammered at the weekend and come into this game against one of the form teams in the division and beat them. So it's all about reactions. And I did say a couple of weeks ago, or even our previous show last week, about how long can this form carry on for Blackburn. Obviously, it's come unstuck now, but I'm not overly worried. But as I say, it's all about reactions, and you judge them by the next game.
Got Plymouth away, which is a really interesting game. A complete side note for a sec, but Justin, you pointed out to me in the week that someone messaged you to say that you look like Blackburn left-back Harry Pickering, which is an unbelievable shout. We've had a shout for Ben Osborne this season already. Yeah. You look like the love child of Ben Osborne and Harry Pickering. It is remarkable.
Yeah, the Ben Osborne one I do not see at all, but the Harry Pickering, I'm like, okay, right, I do see that. So if Harry Pickering's a listener and he wants a selfie with his long lost twin, then I'm all for it.
Or you're his dad. I feel like you're either his long lost twin or you're actually secretly his dad. It's definitely one of the two. But yeah, I can see the Ben Osborne one, but the Harry Pickering one is absolutely spot on. You are very, very similar. Have a search if you don't know what he looks like. I mean, Harry Pickering, not Justin, of course. Sunderland back top of the table after a 2-0 win at home to Derby. Derby gave Sunderland a really good game, actually. Perhaps not as comfortable as many would have expected this to be, but having said that, Sunderland always looked like winning after going ahead in this one, and they went ahead through a screamer by Joe Bellingham. An absolute cracker it was as well. And I tell you what, Justin, I feel a bit bad because over the course of Sunderland's great start, we've spoken about several of their players, haven't we? We've singled them out, but I think Bellingham has actually been their best player so far this season. I think he's been sensational, and this goal tops off what a great start he's had to the season.
I think Sunderland have been so good, it's really hard to pick players out. So there's probably a bit of an eye test you need in here. Romain Mundo's been brilliant, Dennis Serkin at left back's been excellent as well. It's like picking your favourite celebration chocolate, isn't it? They just all hit in very different ways. I know you're going to say Bounty's a shit, but
they are.
They're not. Anyway, my point stands. Everything's great in a box of celebrations. I think everything's great about the Sunderland team. And as I say, I think Joe Bellingham's had to maybe adopt his role within that team under Lebris a little bit, and I think he's done it positively as well. And obviously that goal was just, I don't know, I didn't know he had that in his locker, but then you get some players just pull things out of the bag, don't they? Tiedemann Mengi scored that absolute screamer the other week for Luton. Which is probably a little bit disrespectful to Joe Bellingham because he's an attacker. He will do this a lot more than Tiedemann Mengi does in training, but you just don't expect it to happen. But at the same time, his DNA tells him it's tells us it's going to happen. So
yeah. The funny thing is with Joe Bellingham, he was getting a fair bit of stick from Sunderland fans last season, wasn't he? Mm-hmm. Which I always thought was unfair because he's
19. He's 19.
Well, he's only just turned 19 as well. He's 18 for pretty much the whole of last season. But every time I've watched Sunderland this season, he's been everywhere. And I mean, I'd love to know the amount of miles he's covered so far this season, because it must be a fair few. And he just seems to be more of an all-round player now. He looks like he's muscling players off the ball, and he's doing that as someone who, as we say, has just turned 19 against much older players than him. And then when he's on the ball, he's still fearless when it comes to charging up the pitch. He's just a phenomenal talent. But we all knew that anyway, and he's helping to drive Sunderland's fantastic start. Could be a massive, massive player for them as the season goes on. Justin, you were very close there, but I think we have just done a whole bit about Joe Bellingham without talking about Jude. So well done to us. Feels like progress on our behalf. As I was alluding to earlier, Derby actually played pretty well here. Still yet to get a point away from home yet this season, which is a bit of a concern. Of course, no goal for Ryan Liambe either, which is the real tragedy here. I'm sure you can all agree. He's one game closer to breaking the most appearances without a goal record in the Championship. Come on, Ryan. Preston 3, Watford 0. 2 of the goals came from Milutin Zmajic, who Preston fans might not be seeing for a while after this. It's because he's now admitted an FA charge of biting an opponent. It's after he did it to Blackburn's Owen Beck a couple of weeks ago. He's failed to score in 20 of his last 22 games prior to this. Why start scoring just before you get banned?
New lease of life. Having a nibble on Owen Beck's giving Milutin Zmajic a new lease of life. I'm just going to run something by you. Footballer bites fellow footballer. Footballer is then charged by FA. Footballer accepts FA charge.
Yeah.
Footballer then scores twice immediately after. Make it make sense.
What's your point?
It's not been banned. Like, should he have been playing in this game after accepting an FA charge? Yeah.
Not been sentenced yet, mate.
Right. Okay.
I don't want to get into the logistics of law and what have you, but yeah, I guess he's still available. I mean, Heckingbottom did say after the game that he doesn't expect him to be available for the Burnley game this weekend. So I don't know if they're expecting.
Well, if you need a bit of bite in a game, it's in a derby, isn't it?
Well, there you go. Sometimes a bit too much bite in certain circumstances. But I don't know if he's going to get banned imminently or whether they're just taking him out of the firing line until the international break. I don't know. I really don't know. But it's got to be said, Preston's XG in this game was the same amount as their previous 5 games combined. They saved all their attacking threat for this game, which is remarkable, really, because they've been pretty flat up until this point, haven't they? And then they turned to each other and said, shall we actually try and attack a bit in this game? And it really paid off for him. Alan McCann's goal was superb, by the way, an excellent finish from him. Got to be said, Watford missed some huge chances, Vakun Bayo in particular, with a terrible attempt at a one-on-one. But that second half was by far the best I've seen from Preston this season. And they have to take that into this weekend because, as we say, they've got a tricky trip to local rivals, Burnley. Are they rivals? Or is it kind of like a We Hate Blackburn derby, sort of like the enemy of my enemy is my friend kind of thing?
A unification amongst rivals, potentially. Yeah, it's a strange one, isn't it? I think it's your classic Lancashire derby. It's like they always coin a lot of derbies in London derbies, and obviously also a lot of derbies in Yorkshire derbies.
Yeah.
Not necessarily derbies in a sense, they're just in the same county.
Yeah. I don't know if this is a derby or not, but Blackburn and Burnley are quite close to each other, and so are Preston and Blackburn. So logistically, this should be a derby, but I don't know. I don't know how it works over there. I mean, they can't be that far apart. It must be just a few minutes or so.
A few minutes? No, he's getting geography.
It must be under an hour. Surely it must be under an hour from Preston to Burnley.
He's going to have a quick search for now. I've got to fill the time here with noise. But I think it is a derby. I would say it's a derby. That's what Sky Sports would promote it as. Just to get the viewers on board.
100%.
So what Sky Sports market it as?
It's 49 minutes. It's 49 minutes
That's
away.
Not a derby. It's not a derby.
What?
It's not a derby.
How long does it take to get from Derby City Centre to Nottingham City Centre? That must be about
30 minutes. But
I don't know why the extra 19 minutes means it's not a derby, but I'm sure
a quick technical question. Was that a map from, you got to do it from the grounds? The grounds are close together.
Bloody hell. Mr. Pedantic over here. Do you really? I'm sure this is going to make a massive difference, isn't it? Hang on a sec. Turf Moor
to Deepdale. I think that's where you judge a derby, and again, it'd be interesting to know if the listeners would agree on that. You know, if you can't do it based
minutes. Is that better?
Yeah, that's a derby. Yeah.
Okay, great. I'm glad that extra 5 minutes means it's now a derby.
I'm glad I was right.
Jesus Christ. The final game we'll discuss is Middlesbrough, who have now got back-to-back wins after a 1-0 win away at West Brom. Lovely goal by Hayden Hackney. It's like he turned and said to his teammates, right, you lot aren't going to put your chances away. I'll bloody do it then, because he scored 2 beautiful goals in 2 games now. Prior to this season, he'd only scored 4 goals in 58 league games for Borough. But looks like everything's clicking for Middlesbrough all of a sudden, Justin.
They're scoring goals and defending leads, so you can argue that is the baseline critique of a team clicking. They're doing what they've been needing to do for a long time. I mean, I'm still quite shocked to see that they've only scored 9 goals this season. It's ridiculous. But I think you've got a team here with an abundance of attacking quality, and I think what they showed in this West Brom win as well, that they can deal with the defending side of things as well. The onslaught they had in the last 10 minutes was an example of that. And as I say, you can probably lay some criticism at the door for Borough for not being resilient enough so far this season, but they were here. And morale-boosting win to go to Hawthorns. Not many teams go to Hawthorns and pick up a win, and Borough have done that. Actually, that's a massive result. Massive result.
Yeah.
Huge result. Humongous.
Huge result. Massive
Can't get bigger.
Result. I think I was listening to Soccer Saturday, and they were saying that West Brom, I think, have only lost 6 games at home under Carlos Corberán. So it goes to show that...
I can't believe
say 6 games at the Hawthorns. I can't remember.
Under Carlos Corberán. You said under Carlos Corberán. I can't believe you're quoting...
6 games at the Hawthorns under Carlos Corberán is what I meant to say. I can't remember what I actually said now.
I can't believe you're quoting Carlos Corberán on that, because I detailed these statistics to you a couple of weeks ago. I'm
sorry, mate. But I'm still a bit shocked by you saying that Middlesbrough have only scored 9 goals this season. Just look at that table. They've scored fewer goals than Derby. And as 2 people who see quite a bit of Derby this season, I can tell you that's quite the feat. But this is why I said Middlesbrough were in a false position. There have been a few teams playing better than their results suggested so far. Borough were definitely the biggest case of that. They were just so obviously the better in just about every game. But as we keep banging on about, it's been about putting away chances. And I don't know how they weren't ahead in the first half against West Brom, and I was worried that this might be a case of the same old story with Middlesbrough, but it didn't matter when they've got old hackers banging them in from anywhere he wants. I think sometimes it's just about getting that monkey off your back, and when it eventually happens, everything just starts paying off, even though Middlesbrough are still missing some good chances that they should be taking. But look, just 2 wins and they're only 4 points off the top now. So Michael Carrick will be buzzing after all that hard work is now finally paying off, Justin.
No, yeah, it is. And I think we've laid a lot of criticism at the door of them for creating a lot of chances in games and not taking them. And as I say, then I don't think they've been resilient enough at times, but that hard work is justified when you go away to teams like West Brom. Hawthorn's a very difficult place to go, very difficult to go and pick points up there. And you come away with a 1-0 win. You got back-to-back games, back-to-back wins in a 3-game week as well. Yeah, hugely positive for Michael Carrick. And again, he had to make some adjustments in game to cope with West Brom here. I think there's a lot of positives on display, and as you say, it's a justification of the rewards that they've sought after in games.
And deserved, really.
And deserved,
if we're being honest. West Brom, meanwhile, have gone from 16 points from an available 18 to back-to-back losses, which is interesting. They're still 4th, but definitely want to keep an eye on heading into it this weekend, I would suggest. But there you go, ladies and gents. This has been a roundup of the midweek action across the Championship from the past couple of days. The first round of midweek fixtures, as we say, which means the Championship season is fully underway. So look forward to more of them across the course of the season. We'll be back again tomorrow with the preview show brought to you by SBK, where we'll be looking ahead to the weekend's action before another cold and lonely international break. So make sure you get involved with that before another couple of weeks without Championship action. Do you know what I'm doing tonight, Justin? I'm being dragged along to a 20th anniversary showing of the film Mean Girls And by being dragged, I mean willingly going, because it's an absolutely class film.
You didn't give me an answer to say, no, I'm not bothered about knowing what you're doing this evening.
Okay, fair enough.
And I wish I never found out.
Why?
I don't know why. I just feel like
you seen Mean Girls?
I have seen Mean Girls. Would I go to the 20th anniversary showing of Mean Girls? I don't think I would.
I mean, it's got to be said, it's more my partner who's instigated
this.
As opposed to me. But what's your issue with Mean Girls?
It's a very materialistic film if I was to critique it artistically.
Bloody hell. Look at this guy, just taking one of the greatest films from this century and rubbing it in the dirt. Like that. He doesn't even go here.
Your taste in films is so questionable. So questionable.
It's a great film, and I'm hoping everyone else listening will be nodding their head in agreement with me as I say that.